Link to original text and author's account is in the description. The roaring of the alarm in the corridor outside my bunk practically knocked me out of bed. By the time I got into the corridor, most of my squad were waiting. An automated recording was playing over the loudspeakers, telling passengers to head to the escape pods. Transport marshal may not be the most prestigious position in the DRO hierarchy, but my squad was well disciplined. They didn't flinch. "Radio the bridge and see what is going on," I ordered. What I heard back did make my squad flinch. "It's Cubozens. Marshal, I can't outrun their ship and they're closing fast, looks like they're aiming to breach the port airlock. Can your squad hold them until the escape pods are ready?" Cubozens. I'd heard horror stories about them. Never thought I'd have to fight them. Marshal, are you still there?" My men shrank back a bit. I'm sure I had the same fear in my eyes that they did. I took a breath to steady myself. "Captain, we will hold them." My squad grabbed their weapons from their bunks and we began heading to the port airlock. Fighting Cubozens in close quarters, an old warblade would be more useful than my plasma rifle. Passengers were still fleeing as we reached the port side of the ship. Then a door opened beside me. A human was standing there half-clothed. Someone leave their alarm clock on, or something. By the space, they were loud for being so small. "Cubozens are boarding. Civilian. Get to the escape pods. Now." The human scrunched up its face at me and picked up a little tablet. "Civilian. Are you seriously reading about the Cubozens? Right now?" "Yep." "By the void." "Civilian. They're big floating gelatinous sacks. With tentacles. They're damn near impervious to plasma fire. If they grab you, they will absorb you. Get to an escape pod now, or you're going to see it firsthand." The human just stared at its tablet, eyes flitting back and forth, probably just looking at the pictures. Lame idiotic creatures. As I turned to join my men, the human said, "Hey, wait. I think I can help." "Sure you can. Do you have a weapon?" The little mammalian bared its teeth slightly and said, "Kind of. I got my axe." An axe. An axe. I just sigh. "Port airlock, hurry." Hopefully he will slow one of the Cubozens down enough for us to kill it. I joined my squad and ordered them to ready the weapons. One of my men radioed the captain and told him to shut the alarm off. Thank the gods, I thought I would go deaf before I died. In the silence, we could hear the Cubozen ship latch onto the outer airlock. "Stand fast, stand fa." What is that noise? I spun around to see the human pushing a huge black crate toward us. It was as tall as itself. It had something slung over its shoulder as well. This somewhat resembled an axe. Personally, I was at a loss for words. One of my squad shouted out, "What in the gods' names is that thing?" "The Cubozens don't want your junk. They're just hungry for your flesh." "Oh no, this is my axe." The human let out a couple of unsettling noises my translator tagged as laughter, as it connected a cable from the crate to a power conduit on the wall. "Get behind me. Now," the human said with insanity flaring in its eyes. "You don't want to be consumed by the dragon's breath. It is going to get loud. And hell if I know this will work." Such confidence. Great. Fine. Go ahead, squad. Let us use the little human for cover, since it has volunteered itself as the first sacrifice. As the human was connecting cables and pedals, adjusting knobs on the crate, we heard the outer airlock give way. Almost immediately the sound of a torch cutting the seals of the inner airlock could be heard. Then the human flipped a switch on his big crate, and the corridor lights dimmed and flickered. A loud electrical hum filled the air. If my squad was scared before, they were terrified now. What was this evil weapon? The human was looking up at me, with madness lashing in its eyes, teeth bared with the corners of its mouth pulled up. Suddenly I was more afraid of that little mammalian than all the Cubozens that were about to devour us. The airlock door creaked open and a dozen tentacles slid through, fighting to pry it open more. My men began firing. The human looked toward the airlock, then back at me. In an impossibly loud scream it bellowed at me. "Are you ready to rock?" "Gods help us," I stammered back. Its scream was louder than the alarm had ever been. But if I thought that was painful, what came next was 100 times torturous. 1,000 even. I was not ready. My squad was not ready. The Cubozens were most definitely not ready. The sound was rhythmic and loud. Extremely, extremely loud. Building on itself, from thundering lows to splitting highs. Always crushing. Every time the human struck his axe, another blow came from it. It seemed to only increase in speed and in tempo. How was this even possible? This awful terror. What was this dark sorcery? The human was screaming along with the sound. But its words, what I could hear over the noise and shooting and blood pounding in my head, they made no sense. Trapped in purgatory, the sky is turning red. My men were looking at the human and the creeping Cubozens with equal terror. What was the point of this insanity? This deafening, maddening insanity? The Cubozens were still coming forward out of the airlock, though they looked just as disoriented as us. They were moving, as if they were in pain, but still creeping forward. And we were hammering them with plasma. First one Cubozen dropped, then another. As they crept closer we could see, their color was changing rapidly. They seemed to be shaking and leaking. "Keep up the fire, men. Keep up the heat," I shouted as loud as I could, but the human's axe drowned me out. It didn't matter though. My squad seemed completely focused now, despite the brutality of the noise pulsing through us. But there were at least a dozen Cubozens left. They formed a solid wall. Ignoring the plasma blasts, they were reaching for the human's machine. Wanting to stop it, creeping closer. I could see my death at hand. I could hear the human's screams over the punishing, rhythmic sound of his axe. This could be a glorious death. Raining blood. The Cubozen stretched forward. From a lacerated sky. Their tentacles shaking, oozing, bleeding its horror. Our rifle barrels were glowing red hot as we poured fire into them. Creating my structure. Cracks splitting on the Cubozen skin, but they keep reaching closer. Now I shall rain in blood. A sudden cacophony of noise nearly shattered my mind. It was a whole other level of sound, noise and anguish. Brutal even. It had lost all rhythm. High squealing pitches shook the whole ship. As I collapsed and my vision dimmed, the last thing I saw was the human kick the huge booming crate into the Cubozen horde in front of it. They started bursting, rupturing left and right. When I awoke later, the silence seemed more deafening than what had come before. My ears rang and I didn't feel I could stand without falling back down. The hallway before me was splattered with orange sludge, dismembered tentacles and fragments of Cubozen skin. 2 of my squad members were unconscious. Another was curled up, as though he were a hatchling, muttering to himself. The last was still standing, rifle empty but aimed forward, shaking, still holding down the trigger. A human was standing before us all. Red blood ran from its own ears. That axe still slung in front of him. The terrible booming crate further ahead on its side, silent now, it was all covered in what had just been a horde of Cubozens. The human turned to me, soaked in the blood of our foe, teeth bared again. Does their bloodlust know no end? My terror renewed all over, I managed to stammer, what now? The human only showed even more teeth and laughed again. I'm heading to the bridge to see if the security cameras caught that. Holy cow, that was metal.